I just want to celebrate another game they're winning. I just want to celebrate. Sens win 4-2 over the Toronto Maple Leafs. As a Sens fan, do I need to say anything else? They just beat the Leafs by a combined score of 10-4 in 2 of the last 3 Saturdays. And they finished the season series winning 3 of 4 from the Leafs. This hasn't exactly been a great season in Ottawa. They're last in the NHL standings, and they're going to finish last, but they've beat the Leafs 3 out of 4 times, and that's great news. Anytime you can beat the Leafs, regardless of how the rest of the season going, it's a good night. That happened last night, which means I'm in a good mood today, and the bad relationship continues. Up and down, and up and down. But today, none of that matters. We beat the Leafs! And beating the Leafs last night particularly was oh so much sweeter too. The game was in Ottawa last night, but Leafs fans filled the building anyway. Thanks a lot for that, by the way. Guess you don't know how to listen. And not only that, but Leafs fans came into the game last night extremely rowdy as they got a Go Leafs Go chant going before the game even started. And I mean, who could blame them for being rowdy? The Leafs came into the game last night, and all they needed to do was beat the league's worst team, and they clinched a playoff spot. Last night was just a big excuse for a 19,000 person party in Ottawa. Well, better luck next time, cause the Sens win again! I mean, they're going to make the playoffs. No way the collapse happens that bad that they get eliminated. But for Ottawa to avoid it being them that gave them the playoff spot was so sweet. I hate losing to the Leafs, and knowing they lost to the Leafs and gave them a spot in the playoffs would have been crushing. Thank goodness it didn't happen. And just like that, the Sens are 5-3 in their last 8 games. They beat the Leafs, and they're winning games. Life is good in Ottawa right now. And if you're Sens head coach Mark Crawford, I have to imagine life is really good for him. With the way the Sens have been playing since he was named interim coach, I have to imagine the chances of him being named permanent head coach are increasing significantly. He's done a great job, Ottawa's played a lot better, and that's been nice to see. There is still a lot of room for improvement, but there is some improvement. As always though, let's kick things off with lineup changes. With injuries continuing to plague the Sens, they made a trio of those changes. One came at forward, one came on defense, and one came in goal. The move up front saw Zach Smith return to the lineup after he missed several games with injury, and to make room for him, the Sens scratched Mikhail Bodker. On defense, Ben Harper returned to the lineup after being a healthy scratch on Thursday, as Mark Borowiecki was injured and was unable to play. And in goal, after Nielsen got the start on Thursday, Andy got the start against the Leafs. And heading into last night's contest, Andy had won 8 of his last 9 starts against the Leafs at the Canadian Tire Centre, so you couldn't blame Crawford for putting him in there. And in the early going, Andy made Crawford's hunch look good. The Sens came out flat, continuously turned the puck over, but Andy was up to the task. And thank goodness for Andy too, because the Leafs outshot the Sens 18-7 in the period and outscoring chanced them 11-3. Thanks in large part to a number of brutal giveaways. The Sens gave the puck away 22 times last night, and it started very early in the first period. Thankfully, Andy was there each and every time, and we get out of the first still tied at 0. The Sens at least bounced back with a better second period, as they're only outshot 12-9, and score the period's lone goals. Barely 5 minutes into period 2, a pair of Sens newcomers team up once again to give the Sens the lead. Payarvi forces a turnover and feeds Lindbergh. He moves into the zone with Duclair, feeds Duclair in the middle, who one times a shot through the 5-hole of Sparks, goes in and out of the net before you can even realize it goes in, and the Sens lead 1-0. And just like that, Duclair has 13 points in 17 games since joining the Sens, and 5 in his last 3 games. If they can, they've gotta bring this guy back on a 1-year contract. But that's what I think they need to give him. 1 year. Let's see how things work out next year, and go from there. Sure, it's a bit of a risk, but it's a much smaller risk than giving him a long-term deal. I know there may not be a ton of roster spots next year, especially with a number of kids coming, but Pierre, get Duclair signed. Then late in the period, another UFA comes through again, and the Sens lead 2-0. Paajarvi throws a shot on goal. Sparks can't handle it. Duclair wins the battle for the puck. He feeds Paajarvi, who's now in front of the net. He spins, fires, it goes through the legs of Sparks, in the net, and the Sens lead 2-0. And the Leafs killer comes through again, as Paajarvi has his 5th goal in his last 3 games against the Leafs. But let's be honest, it's not really a goal to feel too good about. That was a brutal attempt at a save from Sparks. I mean, he had the whole bottom of the net covered. Then, I don't know what he did, and he opened up his legs and the puck went in. Not really sure what happened, but we'll take it. For Leafs fans, though, I'd be really worried. If Freddie gets hurt or isn't able to play every game in the playoffs, the Leafs are in trouble. But I'm not a Leafs fan, so I don't have to worry about that. Keep it up, Sparks. Despite the Sens grabbing a 2-0 lead, the Leafs refuse to quit, keep firing pucks at Andy. Thankfully, he's equal to the task and keeps the Sens ahead 2-0 after the second period. But early in the third, the Leafs go to the power play and cut into the Sens lead. Marner wheels into the Sens zone before feeding Matthews in front. He makes a quick move, fires a wrister over the glove of Andy, and just like that, the Sens lead is 2-1. Why does it always have to be Matthews? I know he doesn't score every time they play. In fact, if you take out the first game he played against the Sens, he only scores half the time, but still, it feels like every time. Wouldn't it be nice for the Sens to have a number 1 center? But no! They trade Kyle Turris for Matt Duchene, then trade Matt Duchene for picks and prospects. And that goal proves huge, as the Leafs come back 27 seconds later and tie the game. Tierney turns the puck over with the Sens on a 4-on-2. The Leafs race back the other way. Connor Brown sees the Sens tracking back. He fires a shot, bar down, and the Sens and Leafs are tied at 2. Connor Brown goes bar down. There's not much Andy can do to stop that. But man, why are we giving up odd man rushes with the lead? That's just a case of young players not being aware of where we are in the game. You can't make a pinch like that at that time. The Sens do, and now we're tied. And the Leafs have 2 goals in 27 seconds to tie the game. Here we go. That goal goes in, and all I can start thinking about is, how bad is it going to be? 5-2, 6-2, 7-2? This is exactly the kind of game the Sens get absolutely run out of the building in the third period, especially with 2 goals in less than 30 seconds. Thankfully, the young Sens are unfazed, and when the Leafs make a mistake a minute 20 later, they make them pay. The Leafs turn the puck over in the Sens zone, the Sens race back the other way 4-on-2. Tkachuk and White play pitch and catch. Before Tkachuk hits Ceci as the trailer, he cuts in the middle, fires a wrister bar down by a screen Garrett Sparks, and just like that, the Sens have their lead back. Alleluia! 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 That puck goes in, and that's all I can hear playing in my head. Thank goodness for Cody. Ceci? Wasn't expecting to say that, but here we are. Ceci gives the Sens the lead, and that bad stretch is in the rearview mirror. And for those that don't know me, one of those jerseys back there is actually for the Ottawa legend himself. While he's definitely had his fair share of struggles this season, he was the hero last night, so let's give him a tiny bit of love. Despite the Sens grabbing the lead, the Leafs keep coming, but can't find the back of the net. Jake Muzzin has a wonderful chance in front off a Sens turnover, but he fires one off the iron. Then a few minutes later, after the Sens have absolutely dominated a shift against the Leafs march back the other way. Mitch Marner has a wide open net. Craig Anderson comes out of nowhere, sticks out the pad, and keeps the Sens in front. Those plays would prove huge too, as the Sens would get a late power play and ice the game. So, remember a few seconds ago when I said the Sens have a power play? Well, for some reason, with the Sens on the power play, the Leafs pull their goalie. Hello? Mike Babcock? Are you awake? The Sens have the power play, Leafs pull their goalie, Toronto has the puck in Ottawa's end, Ottawa gets it out. Duclair has a breakaway, skates all the way down the ice, has a breakaway empty net power play goal, which basically never happens, and the Sens lead 4-2. And Mike Babcock, that wonderful man, ends any chance the Leafs have of coming back. Thank you, Mike Babcock. Mike Babcock hands the Sens the win, as the Leafs can't do anything to come back after that, and Ottawa skates away with a 4-2 victory. Now, before we get into good news, bad news, two things I'd like to address. One, the officiating was garbage last night. Wasn't good in favor of Ottawa, wasn't good in favor of Toronto, it was just plain terrible. There were missed calls, and ghost calls, and brutal calls. Just terrible. But you know what? It was bad both ways, so it kind of evened itself out. And secondly, what is up with the Sens and Leafs rivalry? Toronto's good, Ottawa's garbage, Ottawa always wins. Toronto's garbage, Ottawa's good, Toronto always wins. Short of a small window in the mid-2000s when Ottawa was really good and Toronto wasn't so good and Ottawa smacked them around, every time these two teams play, the worst team always seems to win. I guess that's what makes this rivalry great. No matter the discrepancy in skill level, it's always a close game. Now, if Ottawa could only get good and still smack around the Leafs. The Sens outscored the Leafs 23-2 in 3 games in 2006. Could we please go back to that? As always though, let's get into good news, bad news. I know I'm not super keen on calling out players too often, and I know I did it in the last one, but I'm going to do it again in this one. Craig Anderson was terrific last night, and that is the good news. Andy's had his fair share of struggles this season, but to be fair, he hasn't exactly had a lot of help from guys in front of him. But the last 3 games, he's been very, very good. He finally snapped a streak and picked up an overtime win in Edmonton, then shut out St. Louis, and then was terrific last night against the Leafs. Ottawa was outshot 44-22 last night. The Sens only won 38% of the draws, and turned the puck over 22 times. They had as many giveaways as they had shots. Andy needed to step up for them, and he did that in a huge way. He was terrific all night long, but that save he made on Marner, with about 5 minutes left, the Sens clinging to a 1-goal lead after they just dominated a shift, was a game-saving save. I know I said Ceci was the hero of the game last night, and in a small way, thanks to his game-winning goal, he was. But the huge hero of the game last night was unquestionably Craig Anderson. He was terrific all night long, was a major reason why the Sens won, or were even in the game for that matter, and that is the good news. Now, for the bad news. The Sens could not control the puck to save their lives last night, and that is the bad news. I know they won the game, and I know they scored 3 goals with another in the empty net, but they were still terrible at managing the puck. As I said in the good news segment, they had as many giveaways as they had shots on goal. You cannot expect to win very many hockey games if you're always turning the puck over, and every time Ottawa had it last night, they were just throwing it into the middle to the Leafs. I mean, Nylander had a number of excellent chances off turnovers. Muzzin nearly scored off a terrible turnover in the slot. Thankfully though, Andy was there to bail them out, because Ottawa was terrible at managing the puck last night, and that is the bad news. And if the Sens want to continue managing the puck like they did last night against the Leafs, it's going to cost them. Because next up, the Sens return to action on Monday, when they welcome the league-leading Tampa Bay Lightning to town. The contest will be the 4th and final meeting of the season between the two teams, with the Sens currently holding a 1-1-1 record against Tampa Bay. The Sens lost 5-1 to Tampa Bay in early March, picked up a 6-4 win in Tampa Bay in early November, and lost 4-3 in overtime to Tampa Bay a week earlier. Since that contest in early March though, the Sens had a record of 6-1, while Tampa Bay's 9-3. And over the course of the full season, yeah, it's not even close. Tampa Bay has 19 total losses, Ottawa has 50. Tampa Bay has 122 points, Ottawa has 60 fewer at 62. We're nearly to the end of the season, and Tampa Bay still almost has twice as many points as Ottawa. With Tampa Bay not having much left to play for, maybe they'll rest some guys, and it won't be such a big difference in talent levels. And whether they do or not, Ottawa better show up ready to play, Otherwise, it's going to be a long night. See you Monday night.